Like any business, you must change and pivot in order to remain successful. You have to be able to look at what you're doing and be able to identify what you may be doing wrong and be able to adjust those things in order to continue to grow. I've been a Turo host for 7 years. I'm nearing 6,000 trips on the Turo platform, and I have almost 30 cars. And while a lot of what I've been doing over the years have worked, because let's face it, if it didn't work, I probably wouldn't be here talking about Turo today, there are things that I've looked at over the years and thought to myself, okay, things need to change. We need to adjust our process here because what we're currently doing isn't working. And when we recognize things that aren't working and we change what we're doing, oftentimes this new change ends up being a really good one. And so in this video, I want to talk about some of the biggest changes that I've made in my fleet, some more recent than others. I want to break down what these were, what impact this had to my fleet. All of these are changes that either increased my utilization, increased my profit, or decreased my expenses. And most of these changes and recommendations came from you guys, people who I've met through my YouTube channel, who've messaged me either through Instagram or via email with recommendations, and I've taken those recommendations and ran with them. So the first change that I want to talk about has to do with repairs. Now, my team, which if you even want to call it that, consists of myself, my employee Michael, and my husband HP. Michael and HP handle the day-to-day while I handle more of the administrative tasks, so filing reimbursements, communicating with guests, communicating with Turo, things like that. We also have a network of shops and repair people who help fill in gaps whenever needed. But 95% of the work that needs to be done with our fleet is handled by HP, Michael, or myself. With HP and Michael handling the day-to-day, checking in cars, repairing vehicles, maintaining cars. And because HP does most of the automotive work on our cars himself, one issue that we've run into over the years is delegation, and when is the right time to call it quits on a vehicle and send it to a proper mechanic. As a result, a number of times over the years, we've had cars sit for literally months while we wait for HP to diagnose that car. Now, don't get me wrong, HP is an extremely talented mechanic, and I would argue that he is just as capable and knowledgeable as some of the best mechanics out there. So whenever it comes to diagnosing and working on cars, there's really nobody who's better at doing it than HP. But the reality is that sometimes HP is just backlogged with other work. He has other things going on, so fixing a car that's broken gets put on the back burner. This is especially true if we have a car where HP is having trouble fixing it, if we're having trouble diagnosing that car and even really narrowing down what the problem is. And this happened really recently with our Honda Civic. Our Honda Civic has had an issue since December where the gas pedal stopped communicating with the transmission, and as a result, the car isn't running right. As a result of this, the car hasn't been listed since December. HP tried to diagnose the car but couldn't figure out what was wrong due to the fact that we've been busy and he hasn't really been able to dedicate the time needed to really properly figure it out. Though we did have suspicions that it may be the PCM, we were having issues sourcing the PCM. Finally, last week, after having this car sit for months due to what we suspected was a PCM issue, we decided to officially take this car into Honda and get it officially diagnosed and fixed by a Honda dealership and certified mechanic. They were able to pinpoint the issue within 1 day. They actually repaired the car in its entirety in just 2 days, and we were able to get it fixed and relisted on Turo shortly after. Now, this was an extremely expensive repair, $1,600, and this car only cost us about $6,000 whenever we purchased it, so a $1,600 repair on a $6,000 car, it was a hard pill to swallow. But it wasn't the $1,600 that irritated me, it was more so the fact that we allowed for this car to sit for months, waiting for us to be able to figure out in-house what the problem was, waiting for us to be able to fix it in-house, where we really could have taken it to Honda right from the get-go, got it fixed, and at the end of the day, we probably would have saved money because we would have been able to have this car earning money over the last couple of months. Instead, this car was sitting for 2.5 months, it wasn't making us any money, and it still cost us $1,600 once all things were said and done. So as a result of this experience that we had with our Honda, as well as similar experiences that we've had over the years, we've now implemented a 2-week policy with our cars. We're now going to give HP 2 weeks to be able to diagnose and really have a game plan for fixing a car, and if he's not able to get to it within 2 weeks, we're going to send the car to a shop. This is hopefully going to mitigate some of the opportunity costs that doing all of the work ourselves on our fleet ends up costing us. Because while the majority of the time doing the work in-house makes a lot of sense, if there is a scenario where HP isn't able to diagnose a car or repair for whatever reason is taking a long time, or he's just busy doing other things, it doesn't make sense to have the car sit for an extended period of time where it could go to a shop for a more costly repair, but it would be out on the road much quicker. So within the last couple of weeks, we've begun to implement this 2-week policy, and while we really haven't been able to put it to the test because we haven't had a major repair since the Honda Civic, I'm really interested to see how this ends up working out in execution, and this is something that we will be keeping in mind moving forward. The days of letting cars sit for months at a time, waiting for them to be repaired in-house, those days are hopefully over. Next is our employee, and this is another recent change with our fleet. For those of you who don't know, last year, HP and I hired an employee with our fleet. He's a part-time employee, and the idea of hiring this employee was not only to help with the workload of our fleet, but to also help give HP and I a bit better work-life balance, giving us a couple of days off per week, allowing us to go on vacation without having to worry about our fleet, really just making our fleet a lot more manageable. Now, hiring an employee was a really tough logistical decision for me because I had a hard time figuring out, number one, what is a good schedule for an employee? Going into this, I wasn't really sure where and when we would need an employee to step in, what that schedule would look like, and I really thought that it would be very unpredictable for an employee to come in and manage the cars when we needed him to. The second thing that I really struggled with was pay. I obviously wanted to pay our employee a fair wage, but I didn't really know how to structure that. What would be better? Hourly, salary, base, bonus? This was something that I really had a tough time with, and I really struggled finding out what the right answer to that question was. With Turo, the workload is pretty unpredictable. Some days we may not have anything to do if all of our cars are out on bookings and nothing is getting returned, but other times we may have 10 cars to check in. And the thing is that oftentimes the workload can fluctuate quite a bit from hour to hour because we may wake up one morning and have 10 cars that are getting returned, but due to extensions, by the end of the day, maybe none of those cars ended up getting returned after all. Because of all of those things, the payment structure that I came up with for our employee was a base plus bonus. The idea was that this employee would work part-time, 20 hours per week. He wouldn't really track his time, and so that time may fluctuate. Maybe one week he would work 15 hours, the other he would work 25. But all in all, he would be paid the same base pay plus bonus based off of company performance. This was to make sure that he was available when we needed him. He wouldn't be punished if we didn't need him as long as we maybe thought we would. And by doing a bonus, he would also have some incentive to make sure that our fleet would make more money. Now, all of this was a great idea in theory, but in execution, I've come to realize that base pay is just a flawed system for this type of business. And truthfully, base pay is probably flawed for most employees. And so as a result of what I've learned over the last year, we've actually recently switched our employee from base plus bonus to just a higher hourly rate. And here's why. I've realized that over the last year, 90% of the work for our Turo fleet can be done in the morning before 2 p.m. So the idea that we may need our employee in the afternoons or early evenings, it's just not a scenario that ever comes up, and we really only ever need our employee before 2 p.m. Another issue that we've run into is the structure of the flat rate pay with the expected 20 hours per week worked. Our employee is in school 2 times per week, and he works for our fleet 3 to 4 days per week. But because we need him to work 20 hours and he knows that his flat rate pay is based on this, it puts him in a position to where it's hard for him to ask off. And truthfully, whenever he does ask off, so he needs off one of the 4 days that he works, it puts HP and I in a position to be a bit frustrated because we feel like he's not doing the work that he's being paid for. This obviously isn't fair to our employee. Our employee deserves to be able to ask off when he needs to be off. And so as a result, the easy solution to this was to switch to hourly. And really the third and biggest issue that I ran into with hourly, especially with the size of fleet that we have, was filling the hours of work so that he's actually working all 20 hours that he's being paid. The last 6 months, we've had a ton of extended rentals, like a ton. At any given point, about 30 to 40% of our fleet is on an extended rental. And why this is great from a utilization and profit standpoint, from a work standpoint, it means there's less work for our team to do. This is excellent if you're working hourly because you just would work less hours, but it's not great if you're working base and you're working flat rate. We have found that because of the fact that this base pay is based off of 20 hours, there have been a number of weeks over the last few months where we just have a tough time filling his time with 20 hours worth of work. And even if we have 20 hours worth of work, we've also found that sometimes the work that we do have gets sped through at a lower quality for the sake of getting off work earlier. Because the fact is, if we have 5 lists of tasks that need to get done within a, say, 4 to 5 hour period, if our employee gets those tasks done in 4 to 5 hours or in 2 hours, he gets paid the same. So there's definitely incentive on his end to rush through the tasks, and we have found that that happens on many different occasions, and the quality is less than great. I'm at the point where I would rather pay more and have my employee work longer and get paid more for that time, but do a really awesome job for that work where HP and I don't have to double check that work rather than have the work get done faster at a lower quality. And so because of this, this was, again, another incentive to just switch to hourly. Because I would choose to pay somebody more to have better work rather than having somebody breeze through the tasks for the sake of getting off earlier. And now our employee knows that if he leaves early, he's not getting paid for that. Now, the reason why we chose this salary structure for our employee is because whenever I was my employee's age, when I was in college, prior to me dropping out, I was a nanny and I worked for a family that paid me extremely well. So I was in college, I was 19 years old, and I was making great income. And to this day, I attribute a lot of my success to this really good job that I had in my college days because I was able to put away so much money that I then used to invest in other things as I got older. So there was definitely a part of me that wanted to do the same thing for our employee, but unfortunately, it just didn't really work out like that. And we've changed the pay structure not only to benefit us, but to also really benefit our employee because I've definitely come to realize that the situations just aren't the same and thus the pay structure should definitely be different. Again, I think that in theory, the base pay structure makes sense, but in execution, there are just too many different variables that cause this type of pay structure to really not be advantageous in the long term. And it ended up costing HP and I more money than the work that we were getting for that. So as a result, we've officially switched to hourly. So if you're somebody who is looking to pay staff, I probably wouldn't do that base option. Learn from my lesson, either maybe do a task-based pay or do hourly pay. Another change that we've made, another recent one, has been delivery. I bet y'all thought the day would never come. Well, it has, sort of. If you guys have seen my channel before, you know that in general, I'm very anti-delivery. I think that for the most part, Turo hosts default to delivery far too quickly. They think that if they don't deliver, they will never get any bookings, and I think for the most part, that just isn't true. If you deliver, you will no doubt make more money. You will have a higher gross income, and you will be more utilized. But I think that there is a valid argument to be made that if you are a host that heavily relies on delivery and you deliver all of those cars, that once you take into account things like your time, expenses, wear and tear on your personal car, that the cost of delivery is a lot more than I think a lot of hosts realize. And so I don't want my words to be misconstrued that delivery is a bad option. I just think that delivery isn't the only option, and I oftentimes don't think it's as advantageous as many hosts believe. For these reasons, I've never offered delivery for any of my vehicles. But last November, HP and I bought a Lincoln Navigator, and this car has been underperforming. This is in part due to the fact that the beginning of the year is in general more slow than the rest of the year. In Dallas, I know January and February is our slowest months of the year. This is especially impactful with the Navigator because the Navigator is a bit of a niche vehicle. It is extremely large, so not everybody wants to drive it. It's also expensive. But as a result of this, the Navigator has been underperforming. Now, I knew that net earnings, so profit-wise, this car wouldn't be great because this car does have a car payment and insurance is higher than our other vehicles. But even from a gross earnings perspective, this car isn't even in our top 50th percentile. So if we look at profit from a gross perspective, before any expenses are taken into account, we have half of our fleet that is performing significantly better than this Lincoln. We have $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 cars that are making more gross than this Lincoln Navigator. Now, I had somebody suggest to me in HP that we should experiment with delivery, so we did just that. Now, offering delivery on your cars boosts the Turo algorithm. This is something that I've talked about on my channel before. It's something that's relatively well known. If you offer delivery on your vehicle, your car is going to rank higher than similar cars that don't offer delivery. This is an SEO thing, and it's been the case for quite a while. And so with our experiment of offering delivery, we're trying to find that sweet spot of offering delivery, but not actually having to do delivery extremely consistently. And so this is something we are actively experimenting with. What I talk about in this video probably will change, and I will end up making a standalone video about the delivery experiment with the Navigator, but here is what we are experimenting with as I make this video. We are currently offering paid delivery of the Navigator to the airport for $120, as well as 10 miles from our pickup location. We're offering free delivery for trips 5 days or longer, and we require a 2-day advance notice. We have kept instant booking on for both delivery and our regular pickup because it's something that's going to be required. And so the way that we've kind of come around that is by offering the 2-day advance notice because we want to know 2 days in advance if we're going to have to deliver that car. I will admit, I think this is far too long. I think that that is very unattractive to renters, but that's kind of where we've started with, and we will end up lowering that and experimenting with smaller advance notices. I also tend to think that the $120 delivery fee is probably a bit too high, so this is again something we're going to be experimenting with. Since implementing this delivery, which it's only been a couple of weeks, we've gotten 3 bookings on the Lincoln. For context, in the month of February, we only had 1 booking for the entire month. One of these bookings is a 9-day delivery to the airport. The other is a 10-day rental, which is picking up at our location, and the other one is a 3-day rental, which also picked up from our location. And so it seems as though as of right now, offering delivery not only boosted our ranking for people who were looking for delivery, but it also boosted our ranking for people who weren't. Again, this is an experiment, so HP and I are really trying to find that sweet spot of offering delivery, but also making it so that it's not a huge inconvenience for us either. And we're really trying to put us in a position to have a lot of those longer term rentals, something like 8 to 10 days, which my hope, and I tend to think that the case will be, that over the summer we'll get quite a lot of them. But only time will tell. Now, definitely will be making a follow-up video on this because I think the discussion of delivery and how it impacts your ranking and your listing, I think that's a really important discussion to have. So I'm really excited to see what the long-term results of this experiment are. As of right now, we're just doing this with the Lincoln. I don't think we would do it with our other cars because our other cars are just too cheap to justify this. With the Lincoln and the fact that it is so expensive, it makes this a more justifiable move. But again, time will tell, and I'll definitely keep you guys updated. But there you guys have it, some of the recent changes that we've made with our Turo fleet. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.